Upon waking up, Shinichi hears a voice expressing disappointment in their failure, though he can't locate the source. During breakfast, his parents ask whether he found the worm from last night. Shinichi just replies that his hand is numb, and his mother explains that that was probably due to wrapping his headphone cord around his arm. While walking to school, his friend Morino tries to surprise him from behind. Without even looking, he grabs her hand. He denies knowing she was there the whole time and involuntarily gropes her, receiving a slap in return. He denies anything is wrong with his hand when she inquires. During class, however, he's caught using his phone involuntarily. The night before, a strange worm-like creature tried entering Shinichi's head. Since his headphones barred entry through his ear, the creature went for one of his nostrils, only to cause Shinichi to sneeze, waking him up. Panicked, Shinichi attempts to protect himself with a book. The organism misses its mark, burrowing into his arm. Wrapping his headphones around his arm isolates the creature, and his parents, as they burst through the door, see their son with a makeshift tourniquet. After getting his phone confiscated, Shinichi decides to skip class. On his way home, he notices a speeding car on a collision course with a child. Jumping into action, he saves the girl and stops the car with one arm. In his confusion, he sees an eye open on the back of his hand, prompting a quick return home. Grabbing a knife, Shinichi contemplates self-mutilation when his right hand suddenly grows eyes and a mouth. It begins communicating with Shinichi, who demands to know what happened. It ate it. Apparently it was hungry for hands. When Shinichi tries to stab it, failing miserably, the creature requests his help to learn how to speak before falling asleep. After fruitless research, Shinichi awakens the next morning to find his right arm studying, unable to find any information on its own species, though it instinctively knows it failed to occupy Shinichi's brain. Fortunately, it offers to relinquish control of his arm while it sleeps, proposing they cooperate, as it benefits both parties. Shinichi takes a different route to school, admitting he was thinking of going to the police, while his hand argues against it. Suddenly sensing another of its species, it convinces its reluctant host to follow the signal. The pair catch a dog committing casual cannibalism, which expresses its discontent with its host. They begin to run as the pooch pursues, sprouting wings. It's no match for Shinichi's handy helper, who quickly removes the dog's heart. Elsewhere, someone knocks out 3 men harassing a woman, offering to walk her home. When the men catch up, the woman's savior remarks that his stomach isn't big enough for the 4 of them. Disappointed he can't savor her after all, he dashes without dining. No way to save face. It's time for a change. Shinichi makes his way to school. Now that his hand is sentient, he figures it should have a name. It decides to name itself Migi. After helping him score baskets during PE, Nagai becomes jealous when Morino forgives him for the other day. Outside, Nagai attacks Shinichi, who fails to dissuade Migi from giving him a hand, sending Nagai flying. Shinichi learns that the number of recent killings, dubbed the mincemeat murders, is on the rise. He loses the debate to alert the authorities when Migi threatens to maim him. Outside, another parasite pops up on Migi's radar. Believing it's the killer, Shinichi decides to unmask the potential parasitic psychopath. Begging for Migi's help, the other parasite finds them first. Despite being invited to assimilate, Migi chooses to save themselves due to the uncertainty of such a possibility. That night, the man who left his food out meets a woman in a hotel room. The mincemeat murders climb to a staggering 84, which only worries Shinichi even more. He might be the only person who knows the truth. At school, Migi warns of another parasite in the vicinity. Despite his attempts to avoid their gaze, he's quickly found out when he locks eyes with the replacement professor, Ryoko Tamiya. She calls him to her office to chat after class and asks him to meet her after school at a cafe. While they wait, Migi informs Shinichi that there is another parasite with her, causing him to panic, thinking it might be a trap. Ryoko introduces the man as A when they arrive. She reveals that she became pregnant after experimenting. It turns out the baby is human. After A storms off before the meeting ends, he reappears at Shinichi's school the next day, killing everyone in his path. Migi floats the idea of using the other students as meat shields. Disagreeing, Shinichi comes up with an alternate plan, using inanimate objects to block his path. The pair discuss how to effectively deal with the intruder. Unlike A, they're a team, which is something the other parasites underestimate. Migi arms Shinichi. At least this way they have a chance. They only need to be within arm's length. It only makes sense for Migi to focus on defense while Shinichi closes the distance. The plan is a success. Shinichi manages to stab their assailant in the chest. Not being a fatal wound, A retreats, stemming the bleeding. It's too late for him though. Ryoko has no desire to save him. Instead, she blows up the parasite along with her new office. And although she caused a gas explosion, she loses her job for withholding information about the father of her child. Shortly after, she confronts Shinichi and Migi, intent on killing them, only to stop short when she notices faint traces of a bond forming between the two. Wondering about the child, she details her plans to keep it, potentially running experiments on it. They part ways. Migi knows they don't stand a chance in a fight, regardless of how Shinichi feels about her intentions. Back home, Shinichi's parents are planning a trip, which worries him, until Migi reasons that less populated areas are probably safer without a steady food supply. After being convinced of his parents' safety, Shinichi changes his mind, and they leave shortly after. Somewhere else, a parasite controlling a woman's body decides to relocate after getting into an accident. She severs the driver's head, but has difficulty adjusting to a man's body. Late for school, Shinichi hurries to class as Migi comments on how people are noticing changes in his behavior before falling asleep. Shinichi wrestles with the idea of losing his humanity when he happens upon Nagai as he's ganged up on by Mitsuo's goons. When his girlfriend Kana takes pity on Shinichi, she notices something not quite human while peering into his eyes. Mitsuo becomes jealous when Kana becomes fixated on Shinichi, going so far as to kidnap Satomi to lure him into a trap. Before Migi does anything rash, Nagai shows up with a group of friends. Later, he runs into Kana again. Suddenly, her demeanor changes when she clasps his right hand. Migi warns him to stay away from her after learning she's capable of detecting parasites. Meanwhile, the driver from the crash can't sustain itself in a man's body. Happening upon Shinichi's parents on vacation, the parasite decapitates Shinichi's mother and relocates to her body. His father calls him from a payphone, ranting about his mother and catching some monster. When his mother shows up at the house, Shinichi refuses to believe she's been taken over by a parasite, desperately trying to get through to her while holding Migi back. Noticing that Shinichi's brain isn't being controlled, the parasite spears his chest. The blade goes clean through, piercing his heart. Shinichi collapses while Migi jumps into action. Relocating to his heart allows Migi to repair the damage slowly, then migrate back to his right arm via his blood. After a few days, Shinichi jolts awake to find the gaping hole in his chest healed over. But that's not all. He no longer requires glasses, and his overall physique has improved. The Sakurazaki hospital calls about his father, and he immediately packs a bag. Rushing out the door, he's met by Murano, who expresses her concern. Consoling her, he promises he'll be back as he makes a mad dash for the airport. When he arrives at the hospital, his father is already doubting his own memory after investigators claim his wife is alive. A frantic Shinichi tries to get through to him, but his father won't hear him out. And it seems like his changes aren't just physical. He can't even bring himself to cry after everything that's happened. His father refuses to let him stay at the hospital, so Shinichi finds an inn within Migi's detection range, in case the parasite returns. The girl he met on the plane, Makiko, answers the door. Apparently, it's her family's business. That night, Migi reveals that after repairing Shinichi's heart, there's a 4-hour period where nothing will wake him from his usual slumber, leaving them both vulnerable. The next day, Migi detects a parasite on the beach. Asking Makiko for directions, Shinichi sprints towards the signal. Makiko struggles to keep up with him while trying to inform him of the seawall. Without missing a beat, Shinichi leaps over the wall. Closing in on the parasite, prepared to face his mother's killer, Shinichi stops in his tracks when he runs into a man who has full control of his brain, according to Migi. Suddenly, the man's mouth morphs into a parasite, confirming their suspicions. He introduces himself as Uda. The parasite explains how it tried burrowing into the man's neck, causing him to fall off a cliff. So, the parasite decided to take over his mouth and chest to save them both. The next day, Uda detects the parasite that killed Shinichi's mother, alerting Shinichi. The hunt is on. Though the hunters quickly become the hunted, the parasite finds Uda first and backs him onto the edge of a cliff. Uda's body isn't ideal for fighting, so the parasite aims for his chest, piercing him through the heart, as per its MO. This time, however, Uda lands on a small outcropping instead of drowning. Before Shinichi catches up to them, Migi gets sleepy, an awful time for an arm to fall asleep. Luckily, those pins and needles are more like a scythe, as Migi transforms into a blade before his slumber. He catches up and confronts the parasite-possessed body of his mother. They battle. Shinichi hesitates, flooded by memories of his mother, and the parasite lands a blow. Not to worry though, Uda's parasite launches a surprise attack. He rearranged the organs in Uda's chest in anticipation. Shinichi and his father return home after his release from the hospital. The former Ryoko Tamiya asks another parasite to transfer to watch Shinichi at school. Mitsuo confronts Shinichi after Kana brushes him off, but it doesn't go as he planned. Shinichi makes quick work of him. Morino sees the aftermath and wonders if he's the same person. While walking home, Shinichi uses his new heightened perception and senses a dog on the brink of death. The dog is beyond saving, and after its heart stops, Shinichi just tosses it in the trash, upsetting Morino, who begins avoiding him. Back at school, Miki senses the new student, believing the parasite can be reasoned with, like Ryoko. They run into each other, and the new student claims that Tamura, Ryoko's new identity, is looking for an alternative form of sustenance. They suggest Shinichi and Migi represent a bridge between parasites and humans. Kana thinks she senses Shinichi, but runs into the new student instead. Before anything happens, Shinichi arrives, having heard Kana's voice, and tells him to stay away from her, warning Kana to do the same. The new student notices Shinichi's signal is weaker for a second time and tries to get Migi's attention by projecting an intent to kill, to no avail. Meanwhile, Shinichi's father meets with the investigators and finally learns the truth behind his wife's murder. When his son gets home, he relays all the details while Shinichi listens, though his lack of emotional response and overall behavior worries his father. Even Morino avoids him now. One of their friends, who has a crush on the new student, begins to tail him after seeing her brother's work as a sketch artist. She becomes suspicious of his strange behavior and demeanor. While following the new student, she witnesses his head reform after a baseball dents his skull. While trying to make up with Morino, Migi alerts Shinichi of the parasite's killing intent. He rushes to the scene to find Mitsuo's gang about to attack the transfer student. He arrives moments before they try anything rash. Shinichi tells the gang they're messing with the wrong person and offers to take care of things in his place. Shinichi accurately identifies the real gang leader, convincing him to leave, scared for his life. Yuko continues to stalk the new student. After seeing his face change, she's convinced he's a parasite, confirming it with her brother. When she confronts him at school, the parasite has no choice but to silence her, permanently. Migi senses his intent to kill, warning Shinichi, who proceeds to have an outburst demanding to know where they are. Seeing Yuko's empty seat, he leaves class to save her. While the parasite backs Yuko into a corner, she trips and dodges his attack. Finding a bottle of chemicals, she throws it at his head. Migi senses a change in the parasite's composure. The chemicals cause it to remain in attack mode. Migi reports that 3 life forms have been taken out. Shinichi searches the halls for the rampaging parasite, almost breaking down at the sight of his murdered classmates. Luckily, he finds Morino alive. With nowhere left to go, and the parasite closing in, Shinichi jumps out the window, shocking Morino after landing safely, securing their own safety in the process. Shinichi resolves to take care of the parasite, as he feels guilty for not doing something sooner. Instead of re-entering the school, he ascends to a nearby rooftop, picks up a rock, and throws it with so much force it obliterates the parasite's heart, and leaves an impact crater in the concrete behind it. The school decides to cover things up, but Shinichi feels that the public deserves to know. Migi disagrees with working with law enforcement to hunt down his own kind. During a meeting where members of the government debate whether to expose the truth, a doctor suggests that pulling out a few hairs would be the easiest way to determine if someone was human. Parasyte cells writhe and die when separated from the host. The government doesn't reveal their existence, but pulling out a strand of hair catches on as a new way to greet people pretty quickly. After having a dream where she's saved by Shinichi, Kana tries to get close to him, even taking a strand of his hair as a keepsake. He warns her again to stay away from anyone who gives off the same signal he does. Even Migi tells Shinichi to avoid seeing her again. Somewhere else, a new parasite enters a Yakuza hideout and proceeds to kill every person in the building. He tells them it's an experiment to gauge how many armed assailants they could take on at once. Morino continues to wonder whether Shinichi is really the same person she knew before. He reassures her yet again that he is, but she still has her doubts. Kana requests one last meeting with Shinichi, but Migi doesn't approve, discovering multiple parasites when Shinichi gets off the bus and finding himself in the middle of a political rally. Migi detects 8 parasites, not in the crowd, but among the politicians. Despite one of them making eye contact and giving himself away, they don't seem to take any interest in him, though Shinichi definitely takes an interest in the parasite running for mayor. He discusses the implications of such with Migi, though he worries more about Kana and her reckless disregard for safety when it comes to sensing parasites other than him. During Shinichi's next meeting with Kana, he asks if she senses others with a similar signal. She admits that she does mistake other people for him. He warns her again to stay away from those people when Mitsuo shows up. Becoming jealous, he requests to speak with Shinichi alone. The next day, he decides to come clean with Kana and tell her everything about the parasites and his right hand while Migi sleeps. The parasite running for mayor wins the election, causing some concerns about their evolution and integration into society. Mitsuo confronts Kana again while she tries to send a signal to Shinichi as he walks past with Morino. When Shinichi gets home, Migi alerts him to this new development. Kana can send out signals that match those of the parasites now. On his way to meet Kana, Migi senses 2 parasites, though when they pass by, they act as if they don't notice him. Unable to reach her by phone now, another parasite shows up on Migi's radar. If they can sense her, it could make her a target. He's right. Kana senses another parasite and foolishly runs headlong into a brutal murder scene. The parasite, caught mid-meal, is intrigued by a human who can emit the same signal that parasites use. Time slows as she rushes towards Shinichi, who appears in the doorway, glowing like the night of her dreams. But it's too late, as he helplessly watches the parasite murder Kana just out of arm's reach. Furious, he tells Migi to go on the offensive this time, ripping out the parasite's heart with his bare hands and throwing it through a wall. With her last breath, Kana tells him how she keeps seeing this moment in her dreams. Thank you for sticking until the end. Subscribe for more videos like this.